I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Byer, absent. Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Ms. McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Gieske, absent. Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Nordine, here. Mr. Weed.
Here. Agenda additions, I have one. Under reports, item O. That'll be the row proposal for grant applications. Are there any other agenda changes or additions? All right, then I make a motion that we approve the agenda. Support. Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Cummings. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, now we're on to our first public comment period. There's a 4-minute time limit. The card needs to be filled out for this first one, turned to the superintendent. Please introduce yourself when you speak. Yes.
I have Robert Tazer, zoning administrator.
Hello, Robert Tazer, Oscoda resident. This evening I'd like to talk about the position of the zoning administrator that is going to be talked about later in this meeting. Over the past 5 years, we've been lucky to have such a dedicated zoning administrator as Lorna. As vice chairman of the planning commission and as chair of the ordinance subcommittee review, I want to emphasize how important this position is. Every survey, every town hall meeting, social media we've had over the last couple of years, people have made it known to us that their number one and number two concern is the empty buildings in the downtown, the lack of housing. I believe that both of these concerns didn't happen overnight, and because I believe that it also happened because of restrictive zoning. Over a period of time, protectionism and just plain old zoning didn't keep up with the times. We are now proactively going after these issues. We are proactively going after and changing our 165 ordinance. To make those changes, it's necessary to make those changes. Form-based code, RRC, certification, the ordinance revisions, new ordinances, amendments to the master plan, updates, Munich code, new growth, all these things, new site plans, all the public hearings, all the more work for a zoning administrator, all of those things. That's how important this position is. We've accomplished a lot with Lorna taking the lead, making sure that the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals has been doing the things correctly. You know, making sure the laws are being followed. With the constant changing of times and with Lansing and the laws that are constantly changing, we can't allow us to take a step backwards in the zoning administrator's position. These are all important things. We have to stay on top of this stuff. We need qualified people to do qualified jobs here. We have to pay for that. Please do not get skimpy on paying for a zoning administrator. It took us so long to get a full-time zoning administrator. Look how much we've accomplished just in the past year. We can't allow the position to take a step backwards. I'm asking you to seriously make the pay scale equal to the task. I mean, you get what you pay for. This is an important position. Look at all what we're doing here. Look at all the things that have happened. Look at all that we're going to be doing. Look what's in place, the processes, changing in the policies. All of these things is added work for that zoning administrator. Just as the action strategies alone, it's full-time. But if we can accomplish these things, we can get the things done in our downtown, get these buildings, get businesses going, correct our zoning. We need that position filled with a qualified person. Please, let's do it correctly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others?
I have Mark Miller about NEMCOG, vertical assets, prior study, open meetings, and the EDC board.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some good things. For those of you who happen to look at your news online, Oscoda was selected as number 16 of 50 for retirement communities in the Midwest. Also, excuse me, NEMCOG released their vertical asset inventory study about a month ago. Mr. Schaefer has the link, and I tried to print out some hard copies. As you move and do your economic development study, I'd ask that you look at some of the previous studies so we don't reinvent the wheel. NEMCOG did one with Gary Killen and former Mark Hitchcock. The Upjohn Foundation spoke back in the fall of 2014, etc. We also had what appears to be a violation of the Open Meeting Act, not by the Township, but by the OWAA, and I appreciate Mr. Weed's support on that. And two more things on your, I guess you call it an EID board or EDC. I feel strongly you really need to strengthen that board with two senior business people. I was surprised in looking at the hiring that only 8 candidates applied, and it looks like I supplied 4 of them indirectly by running an ad on LinkedIn. In hindsight, I would have paused, and I'm sure Mr. Johnson is a nice person, but I don't think he has the business background experience that you need to strengthen the board. One last thing, final. Our consultants, such as this gentleman, if he's on the clock for time and material, can we sort of move them to the front of the meeting versus paying them to sit here and listen to some of the non-relevant information to them? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? All right, onto the consent agenda. Any comments regarding the work session minutes for October 25, regular minutes for October 28th, and the work session minutes for October 29th?
I made the corrections to that you suggested Friday morning, Mr. Palmer.
Okay.
They're here. If you want to review them, I probably should have printed out a double line copy, but I did not, so I apologize for that. Otherwise, just action with those same suggested comments would work.
Any other comments on minutes? Any comments regarding payment of bills? $234,164.09.
During Finance Committee today, I pulled out another bill in regard to MIC TV, and I had a question I thought maybe the board could answer. I know that we had discussed at one point limiting how many times we were going to pay for the RAB meetings, and there was a charge on the MIC TV bill. I was unable to find in the minutes the exact wording for it, but I do remember the discussion. I don't know if anybody else did, or if that was one of the meetings that was included to be paid. So I just wanted to kind of pick everybody's brain tonight to see if they had anything. Otherwise, I'll go back through the videos.
I don't remember anything specific about it.
I thought we had done a certain number of meetings or something. I thought that it would cover the last one, but December would be the
last
start
one.
of the new one.
Yeah,
But,
the
Okay.
contract is supposed
I'm
to-
not clear on it either, am I
I think
remember?
this contract's supposed to be getting the first of the year in January, but I don't know that we have a contract even with them yet this year.
We don't, but we had discussed specifically the RAB, covering the RAB meetings, because it wasn't part of our regular billing.
Right.
And I do remember, and I'm with Aaron, I don't remember the specifics. I want to say 3 more meetings, but I'm not sure, so that's why I was bringing it to the board and pulled that bill out to check it out.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you remember anything, Bill? If not, I'll try to go through the videos and find it, but,
I don't remember,
okay.
at least not to the point I'd make a
Right, it's not,
make a
yeah,
statement on it.
I'll do a little more research.
So you pulled that out. Does that change this dollar figure?
Yes, because I want to see make sure that it is the amount that we're supposed to be paying.
Okay. Do you know what that is?
I don't really, to be honest, off the top of my head. We could just approve it without that bill in there, subject to verification.
Any other comments on bills?
Well, if we can go back to the minutes for a second.
Yeah.
There were, I'd suggested changes on all 3 of the,
Yes.
oh, so you have the rest,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
all
I just
right.
think that's a mistake. Yeah, so for clarity, form-based code, the typo in the word form-based code, the time of the other work session.
Right.
And then in the main meeting minutes was another typo, changing the word on to 1.
Right,
Those are the 3 I
right,
made.
okay, we're good then.
Because I don't know who him is.
All right, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda with the exception of MIC TV until I get clarification.
Yeah, support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes,
Mr. Weed.
Yes. Motion is passed. Subcommittee reports, project updates, recap of the November 5th election results.
All right, so the 11-5 election results, basically the school board passed their millage for the sinking fund and the road millage associated with the township. Although it was a closer margin, it was still defeated 53% no, 47% yes. So that's twice now on the road millage. I think the board kind of heard the results from the election associated with the road millage. As far as the recap of the November 6th policy subcommittee, we have been working on updating the employee policies and procedures manual, the employee handbook. And so we are working towards that, as well as looking at some policies associated with the facilities and the land use. So the board, we meet again in the beginning of December, and once those are blessed, the board can start to see some of those policies filter up for board approval. As far as the recap of the November 7th, last Thursday, 6 p.m. board work session for the concept of the Consolidated Municipal Services Center, both Rick Freeman from Rowe Professional Services and Jason Goff from Wigan Ticknell and Associates, the architects. They also gave a, based on the map, the dot exercise, and the public input from the first session, 4 of the sites were shown, and there was also public comment associated with the concept of the Consolidated Municipal Services Center. The entire meeting is now posted on YouTube under the same link that you're going to find the Township Board meetings, and that is out there for everybody's viewing pleasure. This Wednesday, the 13th at 3 p.m., we will be opening the bids for the electrical upgrades at Old Orchard Park. And once I have those and we have a bid tabulation sheet, we'll be sending that out to the board, and you can expect to see that on the second meeting this month on the 25th.
All right. Anybody else have any subcommittee reports and project updates? All right, then on to phase 2 of the water main extension.
All right. So your packet contains the recommendation and options detailed by Rick Freeman with Rowe Professional Services concerning the Phase 2 water main extension project. Based on the results of the bids, members of the board have options. There are now 3 options: Alternative 1, Alternative 2, and Alternative 3, which was provided today, emailed out to the board. As far as Rowe provided the 3 alternatives the Township Board to discuss based on the lowest verified bid received for Phase 2 of the water main extension. Alternative 1 continues Phase 2 as originally planned, but would require a minimum $573,000 in additional funding. So Rowe recommends applying for the $700,000 USDA Rural Development Loan to cover the funding shortfall plus a standard construction contingency. Alternative 2 reduces the length of Phase 2 and would require $88,000 in additional funding. Rowe recommends using Water Fund 599 remaining fund balance to cover the funding shortfall if more state or federal funds are not available. Alternative 3 runs the water main extension all the way down to the original Failing Creek to stop before Failing Creek. And so that is to provide at least a water main extension to all of the potential customers down to Failing Creek. And Rick Freeman from Rowe is in attendance this evening and is available to answer the questions based on the information provided there for alternatives 1, 2, and 3.
Comments?
I guess my only comment would be nothing new to all of you, I don't think, but that we discussed it for the public's sake on Friday morning at length because this is a complicated issue given the projected shortfall we had and even the shortfall that we're realizing a bit. Alternative 1 and 2 are listed. Mr. Palmer made a good suggestion for alternative 3, and we talked about different details that we might work to find a solution to the issue. So just thought I'd make light of that.
Thanks, John. I would just like to say that in our battle with this contamination issue of the PFAS coming from underneath right where we're sitting, our prime directive as a township, we do not have the resources or ability to deal with the contamination itself. So our prime goal is to extend water lines and get municipal water to people that are in the concerned areas. So while we would like to be able to pay for the people's hookups, which we were able to do in phase one because of monies that we received from the state, I think it's more important to extend the water lines so that they're available for people to hook up to. And if possibly in the spring, after the first of the year, if the state gets their budget conundrums out of the way, maybe there will be some more additional money that can go into paying for hookups. But at this point, I don't like the idea of going into debt on only the second phase when we have, what, 8 phases to go through. If we start acquiring debt right off the beginning, by the time we get to 8, we would be, I fear we'd be in substantial financial difficulty and maybe not even be able to provide the water lines. So I would prefer to see us extend the water lines, not pay for the hookups, at least not at this point, and have the water lines. We're going to pay for the meter pits. We've already purchased those. And typically that would be part of the owner's obligation to pay in a hookup. So that we'll be providing. I just think it's important that we get these lines extended as quickly and as completely as we can. So I would like to make a motion, two-part motion. First, that I would move to approve the low bid from Elmer's Crane and Dozer for the phase 2, and also move to approve option 3 to extend water main to Phelan Creek with no paid hookups unless additional funds are received.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Any other comments? Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. The Row as needed engineering agreement.
All right, so your packet contains the 2017 Row Professional Services as needed engineering agreement. The board will note that the term of the agreement runs through the 30th day of November 2019, the end of this month, with the possibility of a 2-year extension thereafter at the sole discretion of the township. The 2-year extension for this agreement with Row requires township board approval.
Comments?
Does it have to be for a 2-year? Could it be longer?
The contract
Only allows for 2?
establishes a 2-year contract, a 2-year extension, an option for a 2-year extension.
We have a lot going on. We're going to need them for more than 2 years, I believe. But there's additional options that we can continue to extend.
Correct.
Any other comments?
I'll make a motion that we approve the 2-year extension with Row Engineering.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer.
Or Row Professional Services.
Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Hushra budget recommendation.
So the Huron Shores Regional Utility Authority Board of Directors has taken development of a budget recommendation for fiscal year 2020 under consideration at the recent meetings. At the meeting of November 5th, 2019, the attached budget document was endorsed for recommendation to member municipalities. Assuming that there is concurring approval from the member municipalities, the authority will take up consideration of the final budget adoption at the regularly scheduled meeting in December. The budget reflects the fact that Oscoda Township will experience an increase of $83,149 during 2020, totaling $494,375. And this is a 20.2% increase from the 2019 budget amount of $411,228. The township should note that the 2020 budget revenues are based on a trailing year water consumption calculations, which is used to allocate applicable percentages to each municipality. Also, attached to the board's information are the recently adopted capital improvement and maintenance expenditure schedule for Hushra.
Comments? Is there a motion?
What happens if we don't approve it?
So if we don't approve the Hushra budget, then I'd have to go back with a proposal to Hushra.
To say, okay. So it's negotiable or it's not negotiable?
I guess you would have to, I mean, if you want to go on December, I would have to get something to the Hushra board in advance of that meeting to say, okay, this is what we want differently. So as you see on that budget last year, to reduce the increases, they plan to take $380,000 out of their fund reserve. And this year, again, they're dipping into the fund reserve balances to the tune of $200,000. So that then will take them down to about 6 months worth of fund operating. And that's kind of about as low as they want to go to dip into reserves for the existing fund balance of Hushra.
Do the other municipalities that are involved in Hushra get the same type of increase?
Yes. So it's all based on the water consumption. So ours is the largest because we are the largest user of Hushra.
Make a motion to approve the Huron Shores Regional Utility Authority budget for 2020 as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Any other comments?
So because we're the largest user, wouldn't we have some type of leverage? Or not really? Just a question.
No, their authority could still go through with that budget. But is there something specific that?
I meant just the increase for us because we are the largest user. I mean, I guess I was just thought, that would be beneficial at some point. Maybe not. I don't know. Well, just to be able to go back and, I don't know, be able to negotiate some type of different.
The rates derived from their operating costs. And they have a lot of capital improvements that need to be made. So it would be a matter of going through their budget and determining what Oscoda felt was not necessary in their capital improvements. But based on what I've seen in their CIP plan, they've already done some moving around of their capital improvements to try and ease these increases.
Okay.
And aren't they kind of doing what we need to do in both our water and sewer? That is to raise rates to keep up with what we haven't done in the past, where we haven't raised water rates, we haven't raised sewer rates enough in the past to be able to maintain the level of improvements that we need to make in our systems. We haven't raised. We discussed this Friday. We haven't raised water rates here in years, and at some point you have infrastructure that needs to be repaired and replaced. You need to have the money to be able to do that. So I think Usher is simply doing the same thing that we need to do in the future with our system. So I'm not happy about that kind of an increase for our township, but I think if we want to maintain the level of service that they're providing with the water, we need to allow them their budget and their capital improvement plan that they're projecting to maintain their system.
And so Jamie, if you look at that budget, what they're doing, they're taking the per 1,000 gallons used, and you'll see that percentage. So that percentage of that increase is reflected on usage per 1,000 gallons used. So being that it's a trailing year, this is based on 18's usage because we don't have all of 19's usage. So in that, Oscoda Township used 49.43% of the water. And so that's by far the next largest is the city of Tawas City is 18.25. So even when you look at East Tawas, the city of East Tawas and Tawas City combined, they're not the same usage level. So their increases are going to be smaller because we use the most at 49.43%.
Okay.
And to me, from my perspective, like Mr. Weed said, a lot of their increases are tied to obviously cost of the water that we're buying, but the capital improvement plan. So if there's ever a room for discussion or concern for Oscoda, are we getting our money's worth? It centers to me around the capital improvement plan, making sure that Hushra is making capital improvements to the portions of the system that we benefit from. And as long as we feel and our representatives on the board feel that we are getting that fair, shake and fair share of the maintenance that's going on, the capital improvements, and I'm fine. But to me, that seems to be where we would, if ever there were a conversation of are we getting an equitable share of this whole thing for the money that we're putting in, it would center around that.
And so if you look at the 2019 budget, that capital improvement, you were talking about the $560,600, the vast majority of that has to do with the maintenance that was just performed and wrapped up on the Lakewood Shores Tower. So that's a 1 million gallon tower out there, and obviously painting and maintaining one of those things that took the largest chunk of that $560,000 budget for 2019. And when you look at the budget for 2020, that's the only thing that goes down because they're still putting almost $500,000 into capital improvement, but it's less because they don't have a water tower project in 2020.
So that directly affects our residents, the project that they did in Lakewood Shores.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that so the audience understands that.
Roll call.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Zoning administrator job posting.
For the Township Board's acceptance of the zoning administrator's retirement at the October 28th meeting, it is critical to start the hiring process for a new zoning administrator. Your packet contains the proposed zoning administrator job description, the proposed job posting, as well as examples of recently posted planning and zoning positions posted on the Michigan Association of Planning Job Board. The process would be to get the zoning administrator position posted on the MAPS job board for 30 days through December 12th, 2019. It costs $75 to post the position on that job board, with the intention to rank the applicants to interview the top candidates the week of December 16th, 2019. Based on discussions at the meeting Monday, the 4th of November, the Planning Commission recommended a 5-member committee to interview candidates. It would be comprised of the Township Supervisor, Superintendent, 2 members of the Planning Commission, and 1 member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. There is currently a regular board meeting scheduled for Monday, the 23rd of December, 2019, where hopefully the recommendation from the committee would be discussed for approval by the Township Board. This time frame could potentially help facilitate a transition where the current zoning administrator has some overlap with the incoming zoning administrator to ensure adequate on-the-job training. Current zoning initiatives are transitioned appropriately, as well as the assistance with preparation for the Planning Commission meeting on Monday, January 6th, 2020.
Comments?
Yeah, I don't know what the board's opinion is this year regarding the December 23rd board meeting, because it's often canceled depending on how it falls with a Christmas holiday, being that that is actually during the week, 2-week period, which the school is closed for Christmas vacation and kids are out. I don't know if we are still, or maybe already thinking that we're going to go through with that meeting, or if we're thinking about canceling it this year. So with that predicated on what he was just mentioning, I just feel like we should take that into account, because we haven't decided yet. We usually wait until December to figure it out.
And a lot of times too, when we set the regular schedule of meetings at the beginning of the year, that second meeting in December falls on either December 24th or December 25th and is automatically, not automatically, but is canceled before the regular set of meetings is even set. So this year it fell on the 23rd. I remember discussion was, well, let's put it on there and to decide at a later date. So to your point,
Yeah.
that decision is pending a bit.
Yeah, it is, and it factors into Mr. Schaefer's plan.
Sure, certainly.
So-
Well, I would like to echo Mr. Taser's comments. This is a very important position, and with all of our strategic planning, all the things that we have going on in the community, the zoning administrator is going to be up to their eyeballs in all of this stuff, and it's going to be critical that we have somebody in there that can oversee this, and hopefully, if our efforts are successful, he or she will be processing occupancy permits, site plan approvals to bring to the planning commission. I think this position is going to get more consuming than less, because we have a lot of things going on in our township, and I just think this is a critical role at this point right now to have someone. I've had the pleasure of working with Lorna over the last several years, and she's done a phenomenal job. I hate to see her leave, but I do understand the attraction of retirement. I had that myself, so I can understand that. But I think it's important that we try and get someone in as soon as possible. Hopefully we can find a qualified candidate that will fill that role and get that done before, so that person can spend some time with her to at least get a feel for what's involved with the job. So.
I agree. I think getting a candidate as soon as possible to overlap with the current zoning administrator is wise on our part and to the benefit of the township and the incoming individual. And the December 23rd meeting plays into that, the scheduling of it all. For what it's worth, I'll be here the 23rd, so I would be okay for that meeting. I'll also be in town around then too if it were to get rescheduled. Any time's good with me, but I do think we got to keep that in mind about how that all plays into this. And I'll share an observation that I shared Friday morning, that the township has a compensation policy that limits, according to our wage scale, the wage that an employee, a new incoming employee, can start at. Essentially, in short, it says it's the person has to start at either between step 1 or 3. So 1, 2, or 3. The wording's a little more complicated than that, but that's essentially what you are left with. And we discussed that Friday. I just thought I'd again share it again for the sake of sharing it here Monday night. And that's at odds a bit with what the proposed job posting was. And like I said, we discussed that Friday morning a bit.
I think, as I mentioned, that might be a policy we'll want to take up at our policy committee meeting.
Sure. And for what it is worth, it is one of the newer policies that we have on that whole list. This board was one of the first policies, at least I acted on when I began on this board. So, but if it needs to be reviewed, it needs to be reviewed, I suppose.
John, what hourly rate would that put it at for the max 10%?
I had
Or
the
annual.
figures Friday. It doesn't put it in line with one of the steps on the wage scale. I could do the math here, but the starting as the wage scale stands, the starting starting hourly amount for a zoning administrator is $14.76. The policy with its more complex language, but it lets you go up to $15.20 is the second step, and $15.66 is the third step. Now, the 10% nature of the policy comes up with a different figure, actually, I believe a higher figure, but then you're out of line with our step system.
Right. So with the 10%, would that be still,
$16.24 if you're rounding.
so it's still way higher than what even with the 10% out of the
Yeah.
pay scale?
Well, I suppose you could actually even go up to $16.09. That would be step 4. As long as I'm following the policy correctly.
I make a motion, we modify the pay schedule of the zoning administrator of step 1 to start at $43,000 a year and convert the position to salary.
Support.
Could you repeat that? It caught me. I wasn't ready to write. I apologize.
Modify the pay schedule of zoning administrator.
Do I get to comment?
Of step 1, starting at $43,000 and convert the position to salary.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Go ahead.
Did you get us? Oh, you did get support. Okay. I want to say too that Lorna's done a fantastic job. I echo what Bob Taser said and what Bill said. There's a lot going on, and it's very exciting what the Planning Commission has been doing and putting together. It's been a big change for the township. We haven't done a lot, we haven't done that in many, many years, and so it's kind of nice to see a lot of those things changing. Lorna's done a fantastic job considering she had no experience when she was hired, and I'm sure that and all that training really has paid off for her because she does an amazing job. I just want to stress to the board that we are a charter township. We're not a city where some of the comparables were given. So I think that plays into the wage scale and things like that. Do I think that the new person should start at $16 an hour? No, I don't. I think that, like they said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And, we need to attract somebody, but I also think that the training that they get would be beneficial too. So I don't agree with what's being proposed for that amount. I would be okay with more like $18 an hour, somewhere in there, and I think that comes up to about $30,000 or $37,000 a year.
Okay, any other comments?
Is your motion to include posting for the position?
No, that'll be a separate motion.
Okay,
We'll get through this one first.
okay.
Maybe.
One at a time.
My thought on it is just that we have the policy and it's there for a reason, and this circumvents the intent of the policy. I think it tries to get around it, and it was enacted to put constraints on it. So I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
I'm not opposed to constraints. I'm actually a big policy guy, so I like to have things kind of taped out pretty well. But because of the titles associated to the band ranges and the salary ranges, they were more of a measure of where they currently were, not necessarily where they could be or should be if the personnel were different. So it was probably more indicative of to Jamie's point, where we had hired Lorna for the position with kind of, frankly, maybe some hope that she would actually step into that position, and she did. But if you're hiring somebody who already has that experience, they're not going to come in at $16 an hour. So that's the difference. It's like, the policy or the chart doesn't necessarily provide a guideline for the future. It just represents what we've got at the moment. That's my view.
I'm not sure I follow totally, and if I do, I don't think I agree.
Okay.
But
When a position is opened, usually decide whether or not it's going to be at a certain salary range. That would be a common practice for posting a position, or prior to posting the position. You get HR, you get a board to approve so much money for a particular position. It's, like I said, it's like what we have today with Lorna is now somebody who's got experience and who's somebody who's been doing the role. But again, if we're trying to attract somebody in a short amount of time from, I'm going to have to assume is going to be outside this area, because I don't know of a zoning administrator experienced person in Oscoda. Not that I know everybody in Oscoda, mind you, but you get the point. I just kind of feel like there needs to be a little bit more there. So back to the point, it isn't that a position is always a certain number, although it customarily can be, but it's what the band range is for that particular role. You take and put a position on that band range for salary or hourly rate, and you get it approved, and then you hire them, or you post them and hire them. And so I don't feel like the idea that we just stick people into the holes, like sort of the round holes and round pegs, is going to necessarily get us forward, because that chart isn't forward-looking. If you look at the salary of some of these people, I don't think some of these people could be replaced at the salaries we're currently paying. And I guess also, quite frankly, having a personal experience on this one, my dad, who is a teacher, retired at a salary that when I entered into the workforce years ago, my starting salary was higher than his. Now, I'm just sort of saying it's sort of one of those things where, in a way, people get caught in a ceiling because they've been in a position for a lengthy period of time, and they're not going to be sitting, in a higher salary. So I guess my point is maybe just some better understanding, amongst the board members in decisions that I think affect this. That would be useful, because I think that I don't know. I don't see that that's the comments that I'm hearing right now are going to be conducive to hiring somebody, attracting somebody for this position. That's just my take.
So, and we may have a differing understanding of the compensation plan and the compensation policy, because it's my understanding that it is a guideline and a track to follow, and a structure and a plan and a policy to follow.
Right.
Not just a representation on paper of what exists, but what is anticipated going forward.
Right.
And some of the things that I think we're talking about tonight are, I recall having a similar conversation why the policy got put into place in the first place. And now we seem to be turning that on its head a bit. And I think if the board wants to walk back that policy or change this compensation plan, I think doing that wholly, approaching that compensation plan and changing that, seeing what the board wants to see fit with that, should be done first, rather than changing it to fit this situation. And I will say one last point is that we have successfully employed zoning administrators in the past, Lorna being the most recent example, and by all accounts is doing a very good job. And the position when we obtained that her and previous individuals, it was a part-time position. There were no benefits associated. So this position should be even more appealing than it was ever in the past when we were successful in obtaining employees.
Well, fair enough. I think I take your point. Most people right now look for full-time positions with benefits, and that's usually what you're looking for. I think everybody in today's day and age is looking for benefits, even sometimes more than the salary sometimes, because the benefits are such a benefit. And they're so costly to try to obtain on your own. But I guess my point is that, it's like for all zoning administrators to start at a particular salary rate number is the problem that I was having, that I was specifically calling out. It's like then it means that no matter who you have, all candidates have to fit in that range, and the band range is simply so narrow. So that's the reason I bring it up.
Sure. And then I go back to, in 2017, there are individuals who are wanting a wider spectrum of more flexibility, and this board put a constriction of the 10% on it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that seems to be in direct opposition of what we did in 2017.
I don't agree with that. That policy was put in place according to what the pay scale is. I'm proposing a change in the pay scale. Now, while I agree with what you said about the change the pay scale in whole, I have brought that up in the past, and nobody has done anything about changing that whole pay scale. And now we're in a situation where something needs to change if we're going to be able to fit something in here, because we haven't been that successful in hiring zoning administrators in the past. We've gone through long periods of time without a zoning administrator because it was hard to hire somebody in.
Certainly, not there were gaps.
So I'm all for a modification of the whole pay scale, but are we going to resolve that tonight, or are we going to take care of a portion of it tonight and then resolve it a little later on?
I don't think we're going to take care of it tonight, and I think the proper thing to do would be to leave it intact, abide by it, and then address the thing in entirety.
Okay, but at the Friday work session, we had a quick discussion without any vote, of course, of whether or not this was going to be a stopping position or a stopping point in this decision, and now it sounds like it is. But Friday, it didn't sound like it was.
Friday was rather open-ended. I would say I don't think it was resolved by any means. And
I don't think that's what Friday's for anyways. It's just a review of the board packet.
I recall saying I don't believe that this will be a stopping point, and I don't
Right,
believe that
that's
it will
my point.
be.
That was my point right there.
Yeah.
Right, because I asked the question.
Yes.
So is it now a stopping point?
I guess until I know the motion tonight, now that I see this motion, yes, I suppose. I mean, I don't mean to.
Well,
I'll be available on the 23rd of December for a board meeting also.
then I'll call this to question. We'll roll call.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, no. Miss McGuire,
No,
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes. Motion's passed. I make a motion that we authorize the posting of the zoning administrator job position with the modification of the pay.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Palmer. Any comments?
Only that it seems silly. I am totally in support of posting this job position. I think we should hire this individual as soon as possible. I can't support it with the modification in pay. I don't intend to, I'm not trying to make an issue again. I'll vote no because of that. I just want to make that clear.
All right, any other comments? Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, no. Miss McGuire,
no.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, so as long as we're here, who wants to tackle remodifying the pay schedule?
I think that's ambitious. I don't think we could, I mean, we can go for it.
I've just brought it up before, it
I'll
hasn't
buckle in.
progressed, and
I mean,
there's only so many projects I can work on
well,
myself.
I suppose it's true. That goes for all of us, and we constantly are told to bring solutions and not problems. So I think that goes all the way across the board. So if you're really that frustrated by lack of progress.
All right, updated approval of the Township Hall recabling project.
All right. So back in January 2019, the Township Board approved a project total of $46,264.92 for recabling of Township Hall and installation of new internet-based phone system. As previously discussed, several changes have occurred. The Oscoda Community Center was removed, and with it, the phone sets and the fax line associated with the building. When IT Right was recently on site, they reviewed the project and requested additional wiring drops to maintain segregation of the police department's network and servers from the township's network, causing the total drops to increase from 123 to 131. They also requested 348 port patch panels to be added, and 1 cable tray was added. Your packet contains a change order from ATI, an email detailing the associated project amounts, and an update on the recabling date and the overall project sequence. So in that, what you have is a detail. There are 3 components to this, and the first component being the newly revised IT right amount of $9,524.40, and then you have a detailed, it's a stapled quote in here for all the components of that. So that is less than the previous quoted amount. Then $1,900 for the rack installed above the police department there. That stayed the same. And then the ATI change order totals $34,923.52. So the project total as proposed with that is $46,347.92. So what that represents basically is $83 more than the originally approved, plus a contingency of $250 with the project. So that increases the by $333 to $46,680.92 is the new project total. And if this is approved by the board, they are, IT Right would be on site next Monday, the 18th, to begin the recabling project.
Not IT Right, but ATI.
I'm sorry, ATI.
But same thing, only different.
Any comments?
Okay, so the number you just gave isn't anywhere in this narrative.
It's in this one here. So the email that I have here, the 3 components, $46,680.92. So that's down from the previous $47,499.12.
So which figure are we going from here? 46,300 some?
So it's $46,680.92.
I didn't get that one.
It's on the,
It's on this email right here.
Right, I don't have,
Oh, you didn't get your copy? Oh, then take that back.
oh, here it is, buried.
I gave you a lot before we started.
And the reason why this number changed since the PAC was
Oh, well, that's IT Right.
formed last week was that IT Right updated this quote down. So that's why it changed again.
And if this is agreeable to the board, or I'd also be seeking the authorization for the supervisor to execute the change order with ATI.
Anything else?
So we're authorizing the change to the IT rights portion of it.
Yeah, which would be a decrease, and then there's an increase on the ATI, which was mentioned in the narrative.
And the ATI change order is $34,000?
The ATI change order went from 32 to 34.
Okay.
That's the component in there. And that represents the change from 123 drops to the 131
Okay.
to segregate the police department appropriately.
And incidentally, that came as a side check from IT Right. So it's not something that ATI generated themselves. It was IT Right who came up and did a site visit and basically checked what was originally stated and said, no, what we should do is actually separate out some of these existing connections, put in some additional connections. So that's where the numbers came from. Are there any questions about it? Because I feel like the only person who can provide any more detail beyond Dave is me, so.
Definitely.
No, it's just the way the numbers were laid out.
I know.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
Fair enough, it's okay.
Well, one question we have on this new page that we just received tonight, there's 2 project totals. One's 46,347.92, the other's 46,680.92. Which one
Right.
is correct?
The 680.92, the one on the right, because we're asking for a $250 contingency
Okay,
to be added in.
okay.
Yep. Up until this point, there's been no contingency, which is not typical for any project. So the fact that any contingency for something of this size is not in the order of magnitude of maybe 10% contingency is actually kind of unusual as well. So I had already planned to modify this along the way if I saw things moving. But as it turned out, the movement wasn't so big. I didn't need 10%. And neither did the vendors. So the small contingency here, I think, is like 0.5%. Something crazy small like that.
Is this improvement going to have, so there'll be Wi-Fi in the entire building?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, with the exception of the police department, and they don't have a business case for any of the equipment that they own to be Wi-Fi in that way. Their Wi-Fi, if you want to call it Wi-Fi, is from the police cars directly to a server. It's for video and their computers. That's not Wi-Fi in the building per se. That's outside where there's a separate antenna. So it'll be everywhere except the police department, which includes the fire barn. The fire barn, actually, there will be an opportunity, and again, here's where we don't know the future of Township Hall, but nevertheless, taking a conservative path here, there would be a couple drops there for Wi-Fi for the town, for the barn, the fire barn. In both of the barns, there's kind of a wall there, 2 separate areas, so there will be one there. And then if Mr. McGregor wants to seek out, there's things which fire departments can do with Wi-Fi to help get, for example, when a call comes in, get information about where that address is located, so it's available to give to a driver in a handoff kind of way when they get there to jump into the truck, so they don't have to kind of then do the little cell phone navigation or whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. So there's different things which can be done, as well as opportunities for them to have access to Wi-Fi for training, which they do a lot of over the internet videos, which right now are kind of dicey because they're trying to get Wi-Fi service through the brick walls to the only Wi-Fi hotspot, which is outside of Dave's office.
Right. Well, and the reason I ask is because I know the assessor's office, they have to go stand over in the hallway to get the pictures to download for the GSI, so.
And this handles that. In
Okay,
fact,
good.
there's also one for Treasury and for the zoning as well. They have-
So the bottom line is we're looking to approve roughly $220 more than what we've already approved, if I'm reading the figures right.
I think it's a little more than that.
$333.
Yeah, that's what it is, yeah. There's a net.
The original project was 46,264.92, and we're going to 46,680. Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yes, $320.
$333.
$320.
Something like that, yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it includes the contingency plus a little extra on top of that because the drawdown on the IT Right quote. And the big reason for this, just so you understand, unlike buying a truck where you give them the order and you get the truck and your truck is the truck, when the installation is going on, you may need an additional patch cable. These aren't major expenses. They could be a couple bucks. But the ridiculousness of the situation is that because we have a budget, If you don't have that in the budget, you have to say, no, don't install that $2 patch cable or something along those lines, which is not leaving you with the product, then it just doesn't make it go right, doesn't make it smooth. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that those kinds of expenses are not going to become a stop. When this is done, it will be done, period.
You mentioned the consolidation of buildings. Is the majority of the project going to be able to be moved to the new building?
Well, everything but the wiring, yes.
Yes.
All the phone equipment can be moved because it will be VoIP or internet phone-based phones. The box that you see in the closet today, that's around the corner that is failing, the one that we're trying to baby and keep alive until we get this system installed, that is called a PBX, and that is what's being replaced. Today, tomorrow, in the new system, the PBX is quote-unquote out in the cloud. So that doesn't need to move. All we would do is pick up the phone devices and through the reconfiguration with the vendor, point to the same PBX in the cloud. So it wouldn't matter where we went, as long as we were near some internet connection. Does that help?
Yes.
Good, all right.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Township Hall recabling and phone system upgrade project, total up to $46,680.92, and authorize the Township Supervisor to execute the ATA contract.
Supervisor and clerk? Right.
It should be both, I think, yes.
It's the supervisor to execute the ATI change order.
Change order, I'm sorry, instead of contract, change order.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Utility Department truck purchase.
All right, so your packet contains the invitation to bid and specifications associated with the utility department pickup truck in line with the 2019 capital improvement plan to be paid half out of the sewer fund, half out of the water fund for capital improvement and outlay, as well as the bid tabulation sheet. The township received two bids, of which Gorno Ford was the lowest bidder at $26,560. The authorization to move forward with the purchase through Gorno Ford requires township board approval.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go ahead with the Gorno Ford purchase of $26,560.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Purchase agreement for the sale of Pine Street property.
All right, so your packet contains a purchase agreement for the sale of 8.3 acres on Pine Street for $35,000. The township board will note that the parcels within the purchase agreement are currently listed for sale separately for a total of $76,600. All sales of the real property require township board approval. So, out of the purchase agreement that I just handed you was hot off the press from the assessor, which is a very detailed, almost page and a half of a legal description in there, as well as the tax parcel codes. All right, that is the updated purchase agreement. The terms associated with sections 1 through 16 of that purchase agreement coincide with what is in your packet. The only thing different about what I'm giving tonight is a updated legal description as well as the parcels within there. So that was the addition that was intended. Unfortunately, what I handed and what I printed you to come here is basically an older version of the purchase agreement. So what I'm asking is basically what's in the packet, in there for 1 through 16 of the terms is what I'd like the board to consider, as well as the updated legal description and tax parcel code listing.
Any comments?
Well, clearly, this is one of those where I would not know better than the assessor, but for that page and a half of legalese. Did we stabilize on the amount in item 2?
Yeah, if you look at the packet,
I-
and you look at the PDF version of the packet, what you'll see on page 120 of that PDF
Great, give me a second.
is the sale.
Right, okay.
The only thing that's going to be different out of that packet was updated with the assessor,
Right,
and that would be page 119
yes,
and 118
right,
in the packet.
right, okay. So we're basically getting part of the update on the tonight's printed copy and the sale price from the packet. Okay,
Correct.
got it, thank you.
Well, the sale price and the terms
Yeah.
in the packet agreement
Correct.
are different,
That's right,
the terms.
Number 3 is different also.
yeah, thank you, that's right.
Correct. So 3 is how you want it in the packet.
Yes.
1 through 16.
Is there a motion?
Yep. I move that we approve the purchase agreement for the Pine Street property and authorize the clerk and supervisor to execute all associated documents for the selling price that is in the packet, $35,000, and the terms in section 3, which I won't read off, and the legal description in tonight's printed version from Mr. Schaefer on page 1 and 2.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
It would be pages 1 through 3 for the legal description. And yes,
Mr. Weed,
Yes, motion's passed. Purchase agreement for property on Perimeter Road.
All right. So what you have in one of my many emails that I gave to you before is the description of the listing out on Perimeter Road. So there is 0.79 acres out there for sale for $4,000, and we have a purchase agreement for $3,500 associated with that. So the board can either accept, reject, or counter that offer of $3,500. And what you have in there is a link to the listing for $4,000 as listed, full sale price of the 0.79 acres out on Perimeter Road. What the board will note is this is the property in the triangle form directly adjacent to Oscoda Plastics.
the tax parcel code in the agreement is incorrect. That could be corrected.
That I printed you?
Yeah, We don't have a 006, it's either a 060, 064. Wouldn't be a 065, because that would be personal property.
Any comments on this purchase agreement?
You're saying the tax parcel code should be, I'm sorry, 00066?
I don't know that, I just know it's not right.
Gotcha.
The rest of it is correct.
Okay.
But the rest of the number is correct in the code. I got it, I see, all right. So it looks like a typo. 006 instead of 066, okay.
So for the terms of the purchase agreement, any comments?
Is it, it's an empty lot?
Vacant
Yes.
property.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase agreement for the property on Perimeter Road, the amount of $3,500 with the corrected tax code.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Any other comments? Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings,
Yes,
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Authorization for deeding township property to the DNR.
All right. So in accordance with Resolution 2019-18, previously approved by the Township Board, approval is being sought to formally deed the 40 acres from Township Board, from the Township over to the Department of Natural Resources. So your packet contains the quitclaim deed associated with parcel number 063 009 300 So for the board's reference, this is the northern 40 acres on Loud Drive with the reverter clause that goes back to the Department of Natural Resources, and authorization is being sought for the clerk and supervisor to execute all documents associated.
Comments? Is there a motion?
yeah, I move that we approve we authorize the clerk and supervisor to execute the documents associated with the transfer, the quitclaim deed here for the parcel number 063 009 300 00100, which is the 40 acres on Loud Drive.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Oscoda Township Economic Development and Community Marketing Strategy.
All right, so the 2019 Oscoda Township Economic Development, Community Marketing Strategy, and Downtown Plan were formally presented during the Township Board work session held Tuesday, October 29th, 2019. Everybody from the public can view on the homepage of our website and see that presentation in its entirety. Your packet contains the formal strategies presented to the board during that work session. The board should note that the Economic Improvement Committee will be working in conjunction with the Planning Commission to prioritize these initiatives and align the efforts with the township's master plan, capital improvement plan, and annual budget. The board should also note the adoption of these strategies demonstrates significant progress for Oscoda Township towards the Michigan Economic Development Corporation's Redevelopment Ready Community Certification. The adoption of these strategies requires Township Board approval.
Comments?
I think the product is all very good, especially since through RRC and MEDC, the money we or you've been able to leverage to accomplish this, I think, is quite beneficial. What's the plan? For a while there, we were working like the matrix, to use your phrase, who's going to get what done by when and all that. And some of these plans have that built into them. Are we going to consolidate those into one referenceable document, similar to what we had going there recently?
The best mode I have is a spreadsheet for that to print on the humongous 11 by 17 ledger paper. Okay, some of those goals right now are 2 of those pages long. Most of this goes into goal 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Goal 3 and 7 are parks and CIP. All right, but most of this are 5 of those 7 goals. So based on that, you then have a in the document, you have a kind of like an implementation guide. And so I am getting that from Mr. Borgstrom to copy and paste into goals 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. I haven't received that yet. And then goals 3 and 7, that's going to require some further development there. We're making progress in the CIP. Goal number 3, as far as the parks, that has some more work to do within there. But I would say 6 out of the 7 goals has a lot in that matrix that can be finalized. The other component of that is also those are then tied to the RRC best practice criteria that we're going to get evaluated against. And so that is also incorporated in that matrix. So based on our baseline report from the RRC that was shared, all those reds and yellows help us concentrate and prioritize what needs to get done. So, yes, this information will be transferred into a matrix on those different goals.
Awesome. So we've planned the work, and now we get to work the plan kind of deal, which is the key to all this. I've seen, actually doing it. And I know that the consultants we worked with had strong feelings and thoughts and ways to help make that happen. So I'm excited for the next step.
And I guess that's one of the challenges is you then have to make that real dollars into the appropriations for the CIP and the annual budget and making those initiatives real.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, move that we approve the 2019 Play Sleep Economic Development and Community Marketing Strategy as presented.
Support. Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes, motion's passed. Oscoda Township Strategic Communications Plan.
All right, so the 2019 Oscoda Township Strategic Communications Plan was formally presented during the same Township Board work session held on Tuesday, October 29th. The purpose of the Strategic Communications Plan is to assist in aligning the Township's communications with the core goals and values, positioning the Township to be proactive and strategic, becoming the trusted source for local information. Your packet contains the formal strategy presented to the board during that work session, and formal approval is being sought.
Comments? there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2019 Oscoda Township Strategic Communications Plan as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Let's go to Township Place Branding Plan.
All right, so the Township Place branding plan was presented at the same work session. I have received overwhelmingly positive feedback on the township's brand statement, and this is not new to the board and several people in the audience. You can hear this on the presentation online, but I can't hear this enough, so for anybody watching this, I want to read them the new brand statement. It starts with, just up Michigan Sunrise Coast, past the speeding interstate, is a community where vacations begin and never end. A place where the sun is served fresh daily. A place people came because of the land and stayed because of the water. A place that defended our country and protected the globe. A place where the legend of the lumberjack was born. A place where life on these sandy beaches thrives all 4 seasons. We are Oscoda. We are proud of this place we call home. This place where opportunity truly exists. We invite you to spread your wings and take flight. Your packet contains the township's place branding plan as well as the implementation guide that will be used by the Economic Improvement Committee. Formal approval is being sought for the place branding plan.
Comments?
I loved it. I love the graphics. I love the cleanliness of the appearance of it all. I think it's just fabulous. I love it. It's fresh.
I agree. Very good.
I move that we approve the 2019 Place Leap Place Branding Plan as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Legal services for trademarks.
The very last page of the place branding plan document detailed above includes a copyright transfer statement from Arnett Muldrow and Associates. The township needs to protect its investment in the place branding efforts by filing formal trademark applications. Your packet contains an invoice for $2,530 to be paid out of Property O&M Fund 236, legal fees, from an attorney that specializes in obtaining trademarks. Approval is being sought by the Township Board to move forward with this process.
Comments?
I'll move that we approve the expenditure of $2,530 associated with the trademark filing.
Yep. Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Approval for new police car retrofitting.
All right, so your packet contains an invoice for $5,520 to be paid out of the Police Fund 207 for equipment associated with retrofitting of the recently purchased police cruiser. The payment of this invoice requires Township Board approval.
Comments? There a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve paying the $5,520 invoice associated with retrofitting the recently purchased police vehicle.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. The row proposal for grant applications.
All right, so what you have here is the proposal for preparing project plans and applications for the Eagle. This is the Drinking Water Revolving Fund and the State Revolving Fund for sanitary sewer programs. What this proposal details is the annual schedule associated with this. And as you can see on here, it's kind of detailed through 2020 as far as the statewide funding availability and the necessity of these projects. The township has been successful in getting the ECWAG grant. We can't rely on that on an annual basis moving forward. We're going to have to seek new ways to be able to look at extending water main connections. The township's been successful getting special legislative grants or appropriations through the health department. Those cannot be relied upon as far as every year continuing forward. We need to be able to expand our initiatives to try to get different funding sources, and Eagle does have this available through the Drinking Water Revolving Fund as well as the State Revolving Fund for sanitary sewer.
Comments?
Is the SRF portion only for sewer?
It is.
Okay. Is it still beneficial for us to apply for it? Only for sewer, but not for our water main extension?
So what we can show through that SAW grant is over the next 20 years, we need to put well over $11 million, $11 to $15 million into the sanitary sewer system. So any type of assistance we can get would be beneficial to identify and apply for.
So it helps our sewer system, but not necessarily our water main extension to the contaminated areas initiative.
Correct. That is the Drinking Water Revolving Fund through Eagle. That is the associated with the water main extension.
Okay. Does applying for the SRF at this time reduce our chance of getting the drinking water?
I have to
Sure.
turn that over to Mr. Freeman.
You may.
He's already heading to the podium.
Thank you.
To answer your question is no.
Okay.
They don't play against each other. They're totally separate, different applications. They both have their own project plan and the list of priority projects. You already have, as Dave said, through the SAW grant, a CIP somewhat established. It needs to be massaged a little bit with how to put the projects together in priority. F&V has completed the water CIP plan. So a lot of the effort going into the project plan preparation of this has been completed. So the figures you see on there are time and materials not to exceed. Chances are we're not going to get to those levels of service fees just because of what the efforts you guys have put in already. The project plans go in, Eagle reviews them on a completeness basis, and that they come back with comments. You address those comments based on the schedule, and then in your April and May time frame of every year, then you would go through a public hearing process. Once you've taken into account any comments coming out of the public hearing, then your formal application goes in. Then, based on the state funding limits that they set up every year, then they prioritize the projects statewide as far as a ranking goes. So some years they get $30 million. Other years they only get $15 million. So it just depends on how far down the list. Then what they will do is they will, if they open it up for new applications, you basically can dust off your old application and resubmit it the following year, or you stay in the priority list, and then let's say the top 15 projects come off the first year, then they fund the next 15 or 20 depending on the funding limits. Okay. What benefits you in this position is that in the past, the state and the federal government have used this program to what they call loan forgiveness. Basically, they award a project, and then because of financial reasons or emergency situations or whatever, they will basically forgive that loan, and it turns into grant dollars so that you don't have to repay it. So otherwise, it's a standard like 30-year loan program that you would enter into. So.
Two questions. Does in the criteria that they list and rank who, the priority of the projects, would the contamination we're facing, is that one of their criteria?
That would be that would be an emergency situation,
okay.
And that would score you significantly on the point scale.
Okay, not just for potential forgiveness, but just for
the ranking of the projects.
Okay.
Correct.
Good. obviously not good, but capitalizing on our misfortune to try and leverage that is good. And then we recently obtained an SRF. We're in the program. Will that matter if going back to that? Do they?
No, because that again, they all are individual, and
Okay.
is once you're approved for one, it doesn't really take into account the next, because again, your needs and your project plan will show that you have, as Dave said on the sewer side, $11 million in projects.
Okay.
You wouldn't get funded for all 11 million in one fell swoop, so they would take those in order of necessity.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the road proposal for grant funding as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Resolution 2019-34 to correct utility ordinance numbering.
All right. So what you have in your packet is a correction to the recently passed ordinance that was 2019-65. It should have been 2019-265. And this resolution updates that numbering scheme.
Comments? I make a motion we approve resolution 2019-34.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Economic Improvement Committee appointment. We have a letter of intent from Mr. Tony Johnson to be on the Economic Improvement Committee to fulfill the alternate position. Any comments regarding this?
I'll make a motion, we appoint Tony Johnson to the alternate position on the EIC.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer.
Does the appointment come with an expiration since it's the,
That's right, forgot about the expiration date.
I'll amend my motion to include the appropriate expiration date.
I'll get the date to you tomorrow.
okay, that's good with me. As long as I have it for records is.
All right.
I still second that.
I'll support that.
Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes. Motion's approved. We're on to our second public comment period. There's a 4-minute time limit. A card is not needed. When you come up to the podium, please introduce yourself. Does anybody wish to speak? All right, then we're on to board comments. Does anybody have anything?
I would just like to make a couple of comments as it relates to the Planning Commission. We have a lot going on there, obviously. One of the things, we were finalizing the form-based code. We had a meeting today with John from Beckett Rader. Went word by word through the proposed form-based code, and there was a couple of corrections that we're making, and he's going to have that back to Lorna by Thursday so she can put an ad in the paper advertising that. We're hoping to get that finalized. Now, this will be, this is just for the, what we call the B1 district, which is from Division to Evergreen. And it's, I think some of you have been involved with the form-based code, know a little bit about it, but it bases, there's zoning more on the form of buildings as opposed to our old way of doing ordinances. And it's something that's much more developer-friendly, and it's recognized by the RRC and MEDC as a preferred way to do your zoning. We opted to do the B1 district first and get that completed because that has to do with trying to get, some of our vacant buildings turned around and get some action going in our downtown area. And I think this will help. I think some of our old zoning ordinance restrictions have held up some of the improvement in the downtown area. So I think this would be a big improvement. Second thing that we're working on and have approved is the vacant building registration, which again is an incentive towards trying to get the vacant buildings that are in our downtown area. It gives the owners of those buildings some incentive to do some improvements, to take some action. You're sort of restricted on, you can't force a business to go in there, but if the owners who have just sat on these properties for years, if they're given some requirements and incentives and some costs that they could incur by just sitting on the properties, we're hoping this will help to alleviate that situation and hopefully get some of these buildings renovated and some new businesses in there. Third is we're reviewing our master plan. Our master plan was completed in 2017, took nearly 2 years to complete. We weren't given a very good project. I don't want to go into all that past history of that, but it does not totally align with our new strategic plan and objectives. And so, as a matter of law, the master plan is your document. That is the Bible for the township on how you proceed in any activities and building and things that happen within your township. The master plan is the document that you have to go by. And any of these grants that we're talking about that we would be looking for, one of the things they look at is, do you have a master plan? Has it been updated? And are you following what that master plan calls for? And so it's an important document, and we are going to undertake updating that here in the very near future. It has to be redone. It's usually good for 10 or 20 years, but it's advised that every 5 years you take a look at your master plan because times change and you need to change your master plan with the time. So we're in the process of doing that. And I guess there's some other things we've done with the Planning Commission. We changed the code on hunting. In the past, we had language in ordinance or in the code book on hunting on particular properties, and what we did is we expanded that to all township-owned properties, restricting hunting on those all township-owned properties. So those are just a few of the things we're working on at the Planning Commission and our subcommittee in terms of we're going to be rewriting our bylaws. We have a meeting tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact, to work on that. We're trying to get on our subcommittee everything wrapped up before Lorna leaves so that the new zoning administrator can come in with hopefully a lot of these straggling projects we've been working on taken care of. So we're staying busy there with the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else? All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.